kind of modern perspective that we see with European Protestant ethic. And if you go to Max Weber, what time do we go to? 11:15? So I got distracted by interesting things here.
Yeah.
And also because I'm planning on making these test questions for test 3. So Max Weber, he's the one that gives us this argument, the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism, which basically argues that because of the Protestant north of Europe, you ended up with kind of a meta-narrative that led people to feel like if you were saved, and that was the main thing in your life, was being saved as an individual, right? I want to be saved religiously, right? That my life ought to indicate that I have been saved. So I ought to look wealthy, look successful. Because if God has chosen me because of my behavior, which is actually not totally up to me, because it's kind of a determined by God result, right? That essentially I should look wealthy, and therefore the wealthy are clearly the ones that are saved, and the poor are poor, miserable, and sinners. Not just because they're poor, but the reason they're poor is because they're sinners. Whoa. So, this is Max Weber, whether you agree with it. Of course, a lot of people don't agree.
I don't think anybody's ever agreed with every philosopher.
I agree with that. I think everybody's agreed with that, actually.
Yeah.
Sorry, that brings up Bertrand Russell and the theory of types, right? How do we get out of that current?
Your niche.
Yeah. But so how do I get out of this here? I want to get back to the idea of all of these as examples of a meta-narrative and the hero's journey. Because this is a pattern that we can impose on all. I think you could explain the life of a paramecium.
Well, I mean, isn't that
It wouldn't be
all
as
right?
exciting.
Yeah.
The paramecium wouldn't have a lightsaber or a magic wand.
But I mean, that's what we all do every day throughout our entire life. A story is just a snapshot of time. Like, I was thinking about this earlier in your other example. You talked about the hero doing this during the hero's journey, but they had a long, boring story before that, and they probably have a long, boring story after that. It's just a snapshot, right? But this is a cycle we all go through. Everybody in this room has had a call to something. Doesn't necessarily have to be an adventure. Has had
First grade.
some concept of a supernatural other and some kind of aid or whatever. I mean, you've gone through every single one of these as steps, especially challenges, transformation, and atonement. Probably 1,000 times.
Or once, if you're looking at it
Depends on the level of.
from the age of 99,
Yeah.
and you're trying to figure out what was the meaning of my
Oh,
life.
Yeah, exactly.
This actually seems to me to make more sense the older I've gotten.
Right, it goes with what we were talking about before about models of models,
And this is kind of the model of narration, and I think it's right to sociologically say that primitive societies pass on knowledge through stories.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's in a way you can say story is what we're still doing. Although, I mean, you can take a class on statistics.
They still
And
tell
I'm
the
not
story.
sure what kind of story you can rope that into, you know. But then when we talk about, of course, individual contexts, so when we're talking about a statement's truth value, we're trying to figure out, is this statement true? If we go back to Lana Del Rey's interpretation of I know you, sung in that voice, instead of I know you, I know you.
But that's Wittgenstein's.
Now I know the cad that you are, that you would cut my wings off, right? As opposed to, you know, we could live happily ever after, you know, once you kill the dragon, you know, and rescue me from Sleeping Beauty's castle, which, does that look like the one in Disney World or Disneyland or, oh, well, okay. Oh, I need a quiz question. If you were going to go out trick-or-treating this evening, what would your costume be? You don't really have to be going out. It looks too awful to actually do that. But I'm curious, what does this surreptitiously give me? Gives me an input on the kind of meta-narrative you find interesting. Because if you want to dress up as Voldemort, Voldemort, I don't, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with
Enough.
any of that stuff.
What would you wear?
Ooh, good question.
You know, that's, I think, one of the reasons I'm asking you guys, because I'm trying to find out, you know, what. Last year, I put my cap and gown on and I sat outside dressed as a graduate, you know. And that's not going to be warm enough tonight for that. I did have a coat under it, but still.
You got the beard to pull off Rasputin, you should go with it.
No, I wouldn't pick Rasputin. My personal favorite's Dumbledore.
I was gonna say
There you
Dumbledore.
go.
Dumbledore, I've got
much
Dumbledore's
trainer
hat. I bought it in Las Vegas. It was only $5, but it's the genuine, you know, I don't know where it was made. It might have been made in China, of course, but it's Dumbledore's actual hat, the one that was worn by
actual.
yeah.
You're a Superman.
Yeah, and I have a wand,
Mm.
you know, but it's not the Elder Wand, of course. But you know, so yeah, I could do that kind of stuff. No, I don't know. What would I dress up as? I have a staff, so I could do Gandalf. But I don't have that kind of hat.
Oh, I don't want to go to the next question.
So yeah, it'll tell me a little bit about which meta-narratives you find interesting. Do you guys have any questions, or how did this all happen, talking about tautologies and contradictions?